Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of The Corner Office. My name is Steven Bronken, and this is episode 9, season 2. And today my very special guest is Mr. Jeff Parker. He's a free agent over at Touchdown Hospitality and has been helping out a lot of the different organizations lately, including HT&G. Additionally, Jeff is a huge beer enthusiast. If you ever see the Parker pose, you know what I mean. So I'm sure we'll have a great discussion about hospitality, technology, and of course, beer. One last thing, it is November, which means that on the 11th, it's Veterans Day in the United States, and of course in Canada, Remembrance Day, hence why I'm wearing my poppy here. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hi, Jeff. It's great to have you on The Corner Office, finally.
It's good to be here. I'm excited about this. I was waiting for my opportunity, so I'm super stoked to be part of this.
Yeah, we just give you a number and you wait in line, and here we are, right?
As long as I get up in line. I'm 6 feet apart, so I think we're good.
Yeah, this is true. All right, of course, you know how my show works. Tell me a little bit about what you're drinking.
Well, I'm very excited to tell you about Nursa.
Ooh. Looks good.
Nursa is a beer made by monks. It's actually made, it's monastic. The monks make the beer. They're not a Trappist order, so it's not one of the 12 Trappist beers. Mm-hmm. But this monastery, and I'm probably going to butcher this, the Monastera di San Benedetto in Montine, Norca, Italy, is using this beer in part to raise money for their community, which is what all Trappists do. Even though they're not Trappists, but they also had some extensive damage due to a 2016 earthquake. So this beer and its proceeds helped the monastery rebuild the center of their very small town in Italy. And the monastery itself, their beer, just like Trappist beer, is still made under the direct supervision of monks within the monastic walls. So other than the order that they pray to, it's as Trappist as Trappist gets. So it's monastic beer. Monastic beer for me is really exciting because it's what inspired me as I started to homebrew. And most recently, one of my life goals was to get to all the Trappist monasteries. There are a dozen now. We just got to the last one last spring, so over a year ago now, but Mount St. Bernard Abbey in Colville, England is the newest one. Now I say newest, the monastery dates back to 1835. They only recently started brewing, so the last couple of years they've been brewing, but we got out there. But this beer itself, why it's Italian, is a Belgian extra strong style, as you can see from the dark color. It'd be comparable to a quad if you're looking this up on Beer Advocate or one of those sites. Mm-hmm. Dark brown hue. I hope you can get some ruby colors as it comes through the glass here. It's got great notes of raisin and prune. It's got an incredible mouthfeel. It's got that great aroma that kind of wrestles with bananas and a little bit of spice, even some chocolate. Sure. And it's a 10% alcohol beer, which is what you should drink at lunch. Mm-hmm. And so it's got a little bit of that alcohol punch to it. But at the end, it finishes clean and dry. It's got a little bit of pepper hint. It's a fantastic beer and truly one of the best monastic beers I've ever had.
Very cool.
That being said, I understand you brought something to share. What are you drinking?
This is a 9 Locks, so a watermelon blonde. Of course, 9 Locks makes a great number of beers here in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. And 9 Locks is there's actually a huge lock system for boats dating back about 200 years that they've named it after. And there's 9 sets of locks to go from the Bay of Fundy to the ocean. So it's an interesting spot, but definitely a local favorite. So, well, hey, cheers to the monks. And
cheers to the 9 Locks.
And cheers to 9 Locks, and thanks for being on the show. I did mention in the intro that we'd learn a little bit about beer. You have your own home brewing setup, of course. You want to talk a little bit about that before we get into the work?
Home brewing's been a passion of mine for 28 years, I think now. Mm-hmm. And it comes from a very supporting wife, but recently we've done some upgrades to the home brewery here. We got a 15-gallon system, so that's about a half barrel. I do 10-gallon batches, but I can do 4 in a day. So when I'm operating at peak efficiency, I can put out about 40 gallons. I'm not a style snob. I brew just about every style. I don't do a lot of sours. I know you're passionate about sours.
Yeah.
Sours can dominate your system if you don't do it right. And I don't have the proper venting and building to do it. But for the most part, I get a brew on my deck, which is great. So sunshine outside, as long as the hose doesn't freeze. We have 10 taps available for our friends as they come over and enjoy. 9 of those beers are beers that I made.
Wow.
And then we've got 1 guest tap because, I want to support the local economy. We have a walk-in cooler. About a year and a half ago, we put in, we replaced 4 old fridges with a walk-in for all of our beer and our kegs and everything. So everything's now centralized in the garage. It actually is quite a bit more efficient than 4 old beer fridges, as you'd imagine. And it cleared off some spots on the deck, which made my wife happy. Again, wife happy, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
So no, it's terrific. And I love it. And I love the beer community here all over the world, but in Colorado, one of my favorite recent projects, and I'm a home brewer, so I participated very smallly, but we took a bunch of local Colorado ingredients to support the supply chain. There was grain going down on shelves, there was hops, there was yeast, and they built this program where we all would brew the same recipe-ish, our own slant on the recipe. So 125 breweries in Colorado, and then some home brewers like myself all brewed a Colorado strong beer.
Yeah.
The variety for a beer that's supposed to start on the same recipe is amazing to me. But it's great. But 80% of the proceeds were kept by the brewery. They got most of the ingredients for free as part of this project. 20% went to a community fund to support workers in the industry that had been laid off or were going through furloughs or, for whatever reason, that needed help.
Yep.
And I really get behind those kind of projects. Not only is it great for people, but the beer industry supporting itself is something that really brought me to home brewing and some of the reasons I continue to be passionate about it.
A great project. And I know you've always been very passionate about beer. We've been following each other on Untapped for years, and you've been making fun of my beer choices for many years. So, I'm glad that...
Hey, you know what? But you're doing it. You're trying stuff. I appreciate that. I just like to poke fun sometimes.
All right. So first question, of course, after we got through the beer is tell me your best joke or pun that you got lined up for today.
Okay, you ready? A man walks into a pub. Stop me if you've heard this before. He walks up to the bar and he orders 3 pints of Guinness. The bartender looks at him and asks him if people are joining him because 3 pints of Guinness, what's going on? And he says no. So the bartender suggests that maybe he pour 1 pint of Guinness at a time and brings him over to keep him fresh. The man explains that he's apart from his brothers and that this is his way of sharing a pint with them. Many of us now call this social distancing. The bartender pours 3 perfect pints of Guinness and the man retires to a little nook to enjoy them. The man becomes a regular at this pub, always ordering 3 pints and retiring to the nook to virtually share beer with his brothers. One spring day, the man walks in and he orders only 2 pints of Guinness. The bartender falls silent. The bar falls silent. He pours the beers, and a few moments later, he comes over to the nook to offer his condolences on the man's loss. The man looks down confused, and then he finally understands. He tells the bartender that his brothers are fine. He's just given up Guinness for Lent.
That's a good one. Of course, we've been in this now since March. This whole COVID thing, we thought we were getting out for a little bit, and then we're right back into the second wave. So, what are your thoughts, on the crisis, how we're hitting it, how the industry is doing? Of course, we just had our virtual high tech. Kind of, what are your thoughts on that?
I guess first and foremost, the thought that it was going to go away quickly has been quashed, and now that we're on the 3rd or 4th resurgence, that's scary. It's scary to see countries all over the world and locations in the States and Canada starting to lock down and restrict again. It's sad is the only word I can say. I don't have an answer for it, but I certainly am concerned. But I am, on the positive note, impressed with the human spirit. The amount of people willing to step up and help out, the first responders, the necessary workers, from bus drivers to meat packers to you name it. Teachers turning on a pivot within a day, at least in my community. They went from Friday in school to Monday remote teaching to learn how to teach those students, to get them on board with nary a hit. I mean, really, we went amazingly from an in-person institution that has been that way for centuries to remote overnight or over the weekend. And then the parents that are juggling this new normal, this how to deal with that. It's amazing to me to see how resilient we have become. We were before, but that we've stepped up here and we've adjusted to these constant new normals. So that's what keeps me positive on it. But I'm also confused at how polarizing this has become, but I'm going to need a little bit more than one beer to discuss that. My biggest concern is with the second wall, and I call this the pandemic economic hurricane. I think that when the first wave hit of the first wall, the hurricane hit in March and April, depending on where you were in the United States and the world, hotels and restaurants were able to bootstrap up. They either got through the first wave with smart spending, some labor cuts, unfortunately. There was some government help, depending on the country you were in the world, and certainly some stimulus that allowed people to go out and spend. The rise in delivery services and those things, I also were part of this. But the second wave leaves these hotels and restaurants with little left in their coffers. I'm not sure they're going to be able to weather it. I heard a stat today that 25% of American hotels are at least 30 days behind on their mortgage payments today. And without some stimulus package, which we don't expect in the States for several months, I don't know how cold this winter is going to be from an economic standpoint if we don't get some economic news. That being said, my last note, then we can move on to the next question, is I encourage everyone to support their local restaurants and hotels if they can. And even the ones that have big names on the side of the building, whether that's Marriott or McDonald's. Many hotels are local businesses, and they all have local workers. So that housekeeper that's making $12 or $15 an hour, whether she works for a Marriott or she works for an independent hotel, that's food on her table, that's a roof over her head. The guy delivery driving for Jersey Mike's that's making $12, yeah, he works for Jersey Mike's, but that's a local business owner supporting local businesses. And that money comes back into your community just as well as the mom and pop restaurants, which are just as important. But my wife and I personally go out of our way to support local breweries, no shock there, and restaurants. But especially as we're getting close to what might be another major close down, if people have an opportunity to get out there, whether that's takeout or buying gift cards, if they could go support those local businesses, so hopefully most of them will survive through this next wave, I think that will be a lot for our communities going forward.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, you're right. Even though every brand that's out there is regional or international, they're all local employees. So that's a very, very good point. And you're right. You got to go out and support them.
On a positive note, a lot of hotels that were out of my price range are now available. And I'm sorry that their rate has dropped, but we stayed at the lovely Elizabeth Hotel in Fort Collins, Colorado a couple of weekends ago, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're out there. If you've always wanted to stay at some hotel, check their rates. It might be a great time to experience that. And they appreciate it. Even at the lower rate, they appreciate the business.
That's also very good point. Correct. Cool. All right. So, do you have any other recommendations for those that are in the industry at all?
The biggest thing that echoes, going back to supporting that hourly worker, is take care of your teams. And I say it again, take care of your teams. Hotel life has always been challenging. We worked hard. We're passionate about it. People that fall into this industry never seem to fall out of it. And I've been in it forever. And many of our teammates are just making ends meet. A little extra effort and keeping them happy or helping them out, hand up, whatever we can do goes a really long way. So what I wanted to share about that is I've got a good friend who's helping out with a hotel in a very rural part of the United States. And they're going through a major renovation, which doesn't help within COVID. So like so many projects, the process has gotten elongated. But the owners stepped up for their community and their team, and I really, I'm inspired by this. Back to that human spirit story, right? The first thing they did is, even though the hotel was closed, they're open now, they kept the kitchen open. So they started preparing meals for their families, their hotel employees, free. So that just like the meal you get for your shift meal when you're working at a hotel, they were making sure a meal or two for their entire family was available every single day for their employees, whether they were working or not, they got furloughed or not, just to make sure they're keeping food on their families' tables. And I thought that was great. And now that they're back open, even though they're not at full strength, like so many of our hotels, and at lunch, once a month they do a lunch and learn. Because a lot of these employees, as we know, this is their first job, or they're not skilled in some of the other roles yet, and they hope to grow into them. They do a lunch and learn on the clock, so the employees are getting paid for this, where they bring in local advisors. So they might bring in somebody on regular house maintenance to winterize their house before it gets cold, or on financial planning. So many of these people start to plan for their future and things go proper way to save. And even, it sounds silly to some of us, but on getting a bank account and using checking as opposed to a check cash in place, or whatever, so that they're getting more control of their money. They're not getting dinged for not having that. It's amazing the number of these people that are fearful of banks.
Yeah.
And so taking care of them. But what's even more exciting to me about that is in the evenings they bring in tutors to help either people get their GEDs, because a lot of them haven't finished their high school education, or get their kids through high school so they can move on and plan for college as they go through.
Wow.
And then the last thing that's inspiring is they provide health care for all of their staff, for the employee, 100% fee paid for if they're working 15 hours or more. So, a lot of places in the United States, and I know where you are, everybody gets health care. That's not a given. So to provide this for people and have access to that, I think is fantastic. So first and foremost, and last and foremost, is take care of your teams is the message that I want, because we're going to need them when we reopen. When we recover, whether that's 12 months or 12 quarters, we need these people. We need these people to operate our hotels, and they need us.
Yep.
Let's be clear, they need us too. Beyond that, I'm going to tell you to invest in technology, but be smart about it. Look past COVID when you're investing. Don't get me wrong, there's stuff we have to do today because it's COVID. We have to protect each other from the pandemic. We have to adhere to local regulations all over the world. But when you're making technology investments, this will be over at some period of time. Make stuff that's good make the best decisions you can for what's good long-term, because nothing's worse than spending $1 million now and it's only good for 6 or 8 or 12 months.
Correct. The hotel that you mentioned, that's a phenomenal outreach to his employees. He really is looking after their team. Where do you see the industry going in the next few years?
Wow. So the big boys, right? Disney and Marriott, Hilton Hyatt, and not just in our industry, in other industries, they have all figured out what they think is going to happen. They've all looked in their crystal balls, and you see why there were massive layouts at Marriott, and that was the big news. They're hiring all kinds of positions now because they did a full reorg. They said, the way we were doing it before worked before. It doesn't work now. So we're going to change the way we're doing business. And so they let people go, and that's tragic, but there's opportunities available there again. So I think listening to those companies, they've now made their decisions on investments in human capital and technology, in assets and all of that stuff. And now they know where they're going. That's going to be helpful for the rest of the industry, because as much as we hate to in independent hotels say we follow Marriott or do this, they are still, those major brands are still major influencers in what it means to be in a hotel. Whether what you're doing or not doing is the thing, is what's happening there. So I think that change in judgment is going to change things. Certainly it's going to change the way groups where technology is evaluated. I think a lot of the changes are positive and probably were long coming, and this just forced it. But I see that. So that's the first thing. I think the way operations evaluate technology at every size has changed. So that's a big change. I think that robots are coming, and they've been coming for a long time. But if you look at moves that LG is making, if you look at moves that Cirque Plus is doing, and even Savoki and some of the other technologies out there, I think robots are going to stop being cute. They're going to stop being sizzle, and they're going to be much more about being safe. From sanitizing a room or UV raying it or whatever it is, to helping out with tasks that are dangerous for staff, chemical related or whatever, cleaning robots, whatever that is. I think robots are coming and they're here to stay. I know lots of companies. When I was with Red Lion, we were working on a robot project. I think there's a lot of wins here, particularly for markets that are very hard to staff. And rural markets are one of those. I think kiosks are finally going to happen for hotels. We have been so, awful about it. The stigma of kiosks, was put around in the corner, hidden by the ATM or whatever. We've been training our travelers kiosks for 10 years now with the airlines, and at Home Depot and at Walmart or Kroger or wherever you go, there's kiosks for everything. It actually is becoming so normal that people are becoming more comfortable than having to work with somebody, particularly in an environment where you don't want to touch other people. I think kiosks are coming. I think that they will be front and center. I think we'll be proud of them. They'll be in our lobby as part of the design process so that they're attractive and they don't detract from the vision of the overall lobby, but I think they're coming. People are going to be more and more into kiosks. And I say that not just kiosks, but the kiosk functionality on your personal device. As we get stronger about not having to download an app to do everything in a hotel, which has always been a problem for guests to overcome, I think that these features in a lightweight format that doesn't require a download are going to become commonplace, and we're just going to be used to, just like I'm talking to you on Zoom, or we could be doing FaceTime or Google Hangouts. People are going to be used to doing that with the front desk. It protects your front desk team from contact. It gets the guests from contact. It also lets you do place shifting. Kiosks are coming. I think they're very powerful. And the other thing that I think is really big that I'm seeing is digital payments. We are going to jump the shark. An industry that took 5 years to figure out PCI and has taken 5 more years to figure out or try to figure out EMV is going to completely jump over this. And whether it's paying with your phone or paying online or whatever the solution is, digital payments are hot, and they're going to be hot because they solve all these problems. And whether you're Venmoing hotels, which honestly I've got hotels talking about right now, or you're using some other source to do it. Toast in restaurants is taking off with a hit. I know Square's got a solution. Arvid's got a solution. There's a lot of great solutions. Digital payments are doing it. But the most important thing I can see about the industry in the next 5 years that's happening today is messaging. The one thing I hear when all the work that I do is there's no such thing as over communication anymore. There's no such thing as too many texts to a guest. There's no such thing as too many messages to your staff. There's no such thing as that. So putting in a solid messaging platform that talks to your guests and your staff in a way that is safe, secure, constant, repetitive even, pedantic if you want to go that far, I think is critical. That the one thing, it doesn't matter what part of the industry you're in, it doesn't matter what level of hotel you're at, whether you're a select service or a 7-star luxury, messaging. The best thing we can do right now is communicate. I don't think it's going away. Once you have a personal relationship with somebody with SMS on their phone, that's almost as good, if not better, than meeting somebody in your lobby.
Yeah, I agree. And back to your first statement about the robots, we're going to be seeing more and more of those. Cyber high tech, of course, just happened. There was one company I didn't see there that I thought that we would, that's been developing robots and kind of making large steps. Skynet, I think they were called Skynet. They're
the ones that do
the T machines.
Star Tech. It's the one that it's a company I'm thinking of. They're already very popular on college campuses.
Yeah.
So my son goes to NAU. Call out to NAU, go Lumberjacks.
Yeah.
They do all of their deliveries now via those robots.
I think you're right, though, jumping the shark in terms of payments as well. Blockchain work group is going to get a revamp, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, we got to get. If we're going to do better, different sources of payments, we got to get more secure. I mean, if anything, I tell you, the biggest weakness we have is we've gotten an industry that wasn't strong on security before, not known for being strong. We've gotten a little lackadaisical about it, and I think that we need to refocus those energies because people are running to put in new payment solutions, put in mobile checking and messaging payments, and they're doing that to respond to what the customers need. But they often don't have the staff, process, or revenue in place for the security that needs to be done. So it's a great point. Security is important.
Very much so. Well, cool. Well, Jeff, of course, you and I go way back, but we definitely appreciate you having you here on the show. So thank you very much for stopping by the corner office, and cheers.
Sláinte.
Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Corner Office. I hope you enjoyed it. Special thanks to Jeff Parker of Touchdown Hospitality for being my guest. If you'd like to get a hold of Jeff, I've included his contact information below, should you wish to reach him. Additionally, for more information on Safety NetAccess, our products and our services, please don't hesitate to visit our website at www.safetynetaccess.com. And as mentioned, the Remembrance Day in Canada, Veterans Day in the United States is coming up, so please make sure to go out and support your veterans. Until next time, be safe, be happy, be well, and hey, don't forget to be happy. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Of course, today we were both eligible to get out of the office a little bit, take a flight to Brussels, to your favorite bar. It's called the Delirium Cafe. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. So this is exciting for me because this is one of those places that you go to a city and don't realize it's the gem, right? That you plan on tourism when you go to Brussels, and you go see the Mannequin Piece, and you go see the Grand Place, and you go see all kinds of fun. The chocolate making is amazing there. But we went out for a beer, and the locals, no, this is the place you go. So the first time we went was probably 10 years ago. And we went because they were at the time the Guinness Book of World Records largest number of beers so they had more beers than anybody else. And the thing that fascinated us, and you see the trays on the ceiling in this picture, but if you look behind the bars with the rail of glasses that are hung from the ceiling, they would have, very much like this beer glass is the right glass, they would have the right glass for every beer you ordered. So if you ordered a Guinness, it came in a Guinness glass. And if you order a Coca-Cola, it came in a Coca-Cola glass. I don't know that they're going to have your 9 locks glass, but they might. I wouldn't be surprised. And the taps also hang from the bottom and from the top. So there are rows of taps hanging down from the ceiling that they're pouring beers, as well as the traditional amount that are at the bar length. So there's just beer everywhere and coolers full of beer. And it's down this little alley that if you don't know where you're going, you're in trouble, though it is across from the Jonnekin Piece, which is the female version of the Monacan Piece. So what's other cool about it, we first went back when you were still allowed to smoke in restaurants in the world. So that was a little difficult coming from Colorado. But I've been back several times. They've expanded. So now they've got this beer bar, which is the one we're seeing here, and that's in the basement on the main one, the original one. But they've bought the whole alley now. So above it, if you go upstairs from this bar, there's an American beer bar. And that's really funny coming from America to see what other people interpret us. But basically, it's all the IPAs you could ever think of. Even though Americans brew every style and some styles, that we've never heard of, it's an IPA bar, but that's what they call it. And then there's the whiskey bar. The whiskey bar has 5-inch ring binders, 10 of them, I think, because of the number of whiskeys that they have. And if you make the mistake of ordering a whiskey by its name, they just give you the binder and tell you to go figure it out. You have to order by number. There's so many whiskeys there. They do the same thing with gin. They do the same thing with rum. They've got a monastic beer bar that's got monastic beers from all over the world. Some of those are Abbey beers that aren't truly Trappist or monastic, but they've got a monastic link. But they're all those styles of beer that are supporting monasteries all over the world. It's an amazing amount of fun. And it's back before COVID when there's community tables and you sit and learn and talk to people and you share a beer. And the great thing about it, it's a paralysis by analysis, because for even me, getting there's so many beers I've never had that it takes so long to evaluate the beers that literally the first time we went there, the third beer, we just dropped the book on the ground and went point and picked whatever beer it landed on, because we knew we were going to get something wonderful and we knew we were going to get something we hadn't had before. So it's a great place. If you're ever in Brussels back when the world opens up again, I highly recommend spending some time and getting an Uber or walking. It's only a 5-minute walk from Grand Place, which everybody should see. It's just amazing. But it's a fantastic bar. The staff knows their stuff. So if you ask them about beer or whiskey, when they're not packed, which they almost always are, they'll spend some time with you. It never is seen like this except when they're closed. I've never been there when it's not been packed, and it's just that much fun.
Wow. Well, cool. Well, thank you very much for taking us here today. This is a cool spot.
Yeah. And I'm happy to do it with you non-virtually anytime you want.
Yeah. Hey, I'm ready to get out of the house. Let's go.
Okay.
Cheers, man.
Cilantro, my friend.